Hey guys, this is Kim Stevens, your community leader for the Women on the Channel Leadership Network. Welcome to another WOW session. I am delighted to introduce you to AnnMarie Santamarina, who is with Lincoln IT. AnnMarie, thanks for joining me.
Hi, Kim. I'm so happy to be here.
So AnnMarie is the Director of Business Development. And AnnMarie, if you don't mind, just for those folks that may not be familiar with Lincoln IT, just give us a little elevator pitch of what you guys are all about.
It would be my pleasure. Lincoln IT is a managed service provider. So we have been in business since 1998, so been around a little bit. And we provide IT services to commercial and nonprofit businesses all over the country. I mean, we're here I'm in New York City. We're based in Long Island, but we have offices, brick and mortar offices in a couple of places in New York, East Hampton, New York City, but we are continually growing our team throughout the country.
Wonderful. And I know we've talked, but I think it would be really interesting for the members to understand kind of where you started and how you got to where you are now, because it's super interesting. Can you share that?
Oh, I'd love to. Thank you for asking. So I came to Lincoln IT via acquisition. I actually owned and operated my own MSP with a partner. I had a partner who's a male, technical male, and we started that business in 1998. So just incidentally, the same year that Lincoln IT started, that was not part of the acquisition strategy at all. The numbers just kind of worked out that way. And we ran it for 20 years and made a proactive decision that we wanted to build. We wanted to be bigger. And I personally wanted to expand my role, and being, a business owner of a small, yet thriving business, you wear a lot of hats. And I don't look good in that many hats. So, I wanted to really just grow my ability to do more customer facing and customer engagement work. So we actually, put ourselves out to market, and we happened to be in some peer-to-peer networks. So I had kind of an inside track to some other MSPs in the industry, which was very helpful in that exercise. And we landed at Lincoln IT, which just pleases me to no end, because they just have a really great product, and a lot of the things that we wanted to build, they already had in place. And we were able to bring over the whole team, all the customers, and those were some of the things that were really important to us when we were negotiating the deal.
What was your background before that, and what drew you to just say, you know what, I'm going to run my own MSP? How did that come to be?
Oh, wow. So I'm going to start with a funny story about how I got into IT, because I have a business background. And what I really wanted to be when I grew up was an international journalist. And I'm obviously not doing that. But I did go to school for business with a real emphasis on marketing. And so I was trying to find a job in marketing, and I interviewed with an IT company back in the 90s. At that point it was, I guess you would call them a VAR, right? We weren't even a managed service provider. We were a VAR. And it was a temporary position. And I'm going to tell you this story. I don't know if it'll be valuable or not, but it's kind of a cool story. It gives a little bit of insight into who I am. So I was interviewing with the owner of the company, and he said to me, and prior to that, I'd been doing administrative work. I was an administrative assistant while I was putting myself through college, but I knew that I wanted to do more. And by the way, I think administrative professionals are the bee's knees. I think that, they are really the undercurrent of every organization. So this is not in any way meant to be disparaging to anybody who's an administrative professional. I was just ready to move to the next level myself. It was just a vision that I had from my career roadmap. So I was meeting with the owner of this particular organization, and he said, well, this is just a temporary position, and I think I could really use you in our technical services department. And I said, I don't have any technical services skills. Like, I'm not really sure what you heard, because I tend to be, even in how I sell and I operate with customers, I'm very transparent, because I don't want to make something up and then they ask for more and you're like, that's all I got. What you heard is all I got. So he said, no, just hear me out. And he said, I have this growing services department, and I think you would be a great service coordinator. So I was still listening, right? And then he said, I need administrative work. And I got up, I started standing while he was talking, and I reached across the desk and I said, I really want to thank you for your time. And he said, what are you doing? And I said, I really just don't want to do administrative work anymore. And you're a very busy man, so I don't want to waste another minute of your time. And he said, will you just sit back down for a minute? So of course I obliged. I sat back down and he said, I don't care what we call you. He said, if you want, I'll hire you as a consultant. He said, you have skills that I think could be really beneficial here, and I want to make that happen. And so that was my first job in IT. So I did actually take the job as a consultant because we couldn't really land. And that happens a lot in my career. I tend to it's a little bit undefined, and maybe I like the kind of like the persona of that parts unknown so that I can, bring myself into other areas of the business. I really enjoy the diversity of the roles that I've been able to be in IT, in the industry, right? Because I don't particularly deliver any IT services myself, but just, within the industry. So I'm getting to my point here. At that firm, I met my ex-business partner. So I took the job as a service coordinator. I grew into a project manager role, and I got really involved in client engagement. And that was kind of my first taste of the customer experience and how critical it is and how I could make an impact, especially working with, technical people who, especially back then, these were a lot of kind of guys who just worked in the back room. So they didn't have the time or the energy to think about kind of what the customer was experiencing per se, because they had a lot of other things they had to focus on. So I met my partner, and he really had a vision that he wanted to start a business. So after working together for like a couple of years, he said, do you want to start a company? And I said, sure, why not? I always had this kind of ability to presuppose what was going to be needed. And I think as a person, I just want people to be comfortable. So that's maybe where the innate quality comes in, as I think about, people's comfort. And one of the things when I would manage projects, and we would do large rollouts, and, so we would touch people's desks. And I used to say to my team, and I still say it to them, we're going into people's personal space. So if you move their picture of their kids on their desk, put it back where you found it. Because that's why IT gets a bad rap, because, it's oh, they don't care, they don't understand. And, it's not that we don't understand. We very much understand. And we do very much care, but we also have something we need to deliver. So when we would do rollouts and change people's passwords, I would, we created these little cards, and we would say, call the help desk on Monday morning for your new password, and we would leave a chocolate. So they wouldn't come in and be like, oh, I don't know what to do, because it's that you've disrupted me. Now what do I do? So yes, I guess I always lead with thinking about, what the customer experience is going to be, how they're going to respond. And I do try to integrate that into whatever level I'm engaging with the customer on.
As a leader, do you feel that the emotional intelligence that you have, are you aware of it? That sounds like a strange question, but are you aware of it? Do you find that it's suited you well, or is it something that you're still learning to tap into?
I wasn't always aware of it. And so I don't know, I'm going to date myself here, but do you remember the show Murphy Brown?
Yeah.
So remember Murphy Brown used to go through assistants, and I think I had a little Murphy Brown in me when I first started the company. And I used to, my partner would call me out on it sometimes. He's like, you have to be nicer to people. And I'm like, well, I have a business to run, right? And I was always because I was always worried about, making sure that the employees got paid, making sure the customers got what they needed. And so, but I would almost wear that worry on my sleeve. And it took me a really long time to recognize how much that impacted the people that worked for me.
Okay.
And so I happened to, learn a lot. And I had some people who worked for me who were quite willing to give some open feedback. And I was very willing to hear it. So, there was a point in my career where I thought, okay, I can continue to be like a hard-nosed manager, or I can be more empathetic and still, or empathic. I don't know what the word is. I've heard it both ways, right?
Mhm.
Um, and still drive results, right? So you don't have to be unfeeling or hard-nosed to be productive and successful. At least that's in my book. That's what I've learned.
Mhm.
And so in terms of emotional intelligence, I really start with the people first now. Like whether, I came into a new team at Lincoln, right? Like I was a business owner, and a lot of people have said to me, how did you do that? How did you go from being a business owner to an employee? Like, what was that like? And I'm like, well, if you say it with that tone, then it sounds like a downgrade. But for me, it was an expansion, right? Because I wasn't giving up anything, right? I was growing into something.
The power of your mindset. Like you said, that the comments could have been, well, gosh, you say it like that, it sounds like a terrible thing. But you said earlier, I was wearing many hats and I don't really like all those hats, right? So it's like, I want to double down on the areas that feeds me and fuels me. And have the mindset of I get to do this as opposed to I have to do this. And
I
that's
love that. Oh my
right.
gosh.
It's such your mindset. So I just applaud you for that, because it's so important to not let other people's comments, dampen your parade, right?
And let
So
me say this, if I can interrupt you,
yeah.
there's definitely an ego factor, right? Like I had to report to somebody. I hadn't done that in 20 years. I was accountable to certain things. I had to be at my desk at a certain time. Like there were just things that I hadn't done in a long time. And those shifts were challenging.
Okay.
And, so it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I had it all figured out. It wasn't that at all, actually. And there were things along the way that made me pause and say, oh, is this really what I wanted? Right? Did I make a mistake? Uh-oh, and you're gonna have that, right? But that, what you said about I have to do this versus I get to do this, I do remind myself that, I wanted to have time for more creativity. Well, I run marketing at Lincoln now. So I get to dabble in that creativity. I get to create campaigns and come up with messaging. And, I get to, interact with a larger team and throw around ideas. So for the things that maybe were harder adjustments, and then I did some things to kind of counteract that. Like I negotiated to become a consultant because that made more sense for me. So I'm still in a role, I'm still engaged, but I kind of brought back some of my freedom that I was missing. So I think the mindset is really critical. And I think taking the time to actually think about what do I want to create out of this situation,
Yeah.
right? What am I looking for? Because I think we sometimes can get caught up in the mindset of what's happening to us versus what's happening around us and how we can participate. So I really do try to kind of lead with the mindset of, well, what's happening around me and how am I going to choose to participate in what's happening around me? The never ending task list and what others are expecting of me. And as I think about kind of what my next steps are, and as I think about maybe taking on multiple clients, like there were some lessons learned for me in the first go around where I, let the business run me versus me running the business. And, my husband can tell you about how many vacations were interrupted
Yeah.
because there was an upset client. And that probably will never change, right? If someone needs me. But my evaluation of the situation, I think I've gotten a little bit more mature in recognizing when something really is a fire and when someone's just blowing smoke. Right. And when, okay, is this something I really have to stop what I'm doing because you are having a perceived emergency? Or is this a real emergency and it absolutely, it justifies kind of, pulling up the anchor and getting back on the water or whatever, however you want to kind of play that into, what this visual we've created for ourselves.
So that's really good for the members too to consider. Is this really a fire? Is this something that can wait? Or is my motivation to jump all over it and drop everything else because of my need to feel like I'm so valued and, to prove it, to overprove it? There's a
Or
lot
you
of
don't
that.
want to disappoint, right? I don't want to let down. I don't want to disappoint. This person will be upset. Like a couple of the gauges that I use are, is their upset going to be is their upset going to be greater than my upset, right? So if I let their upset define what I do next, well, what's the upset I'm going to create in my own day or week or a month? And is that worth it, right? So just giving that comparative and allowing yourself to be part of the equation, right? Like actually making yourself part of the decision making, as opposed to this person needs this, so I have to drop what I'm doing, which means now I may have to work till midnight because I can't let this deadline go. And then that just compiles.
Oh my gosh, you have blessed me beyond belief. So AnnMarie, thank you for doing this. And you guys, I know once you listen to this, you're probably going to want to replay it back and get your notebook out, take some notes here. There's so much good stuff. So thank you for doing this with me, and thank you for blessing our members.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Kim.
All right, you guys, well, once you take a listen to this, please give AnnMarie a shout out, give her a thumbs up, make a comment on the post, and just let her know how much you appreciate what she has shared. And we'll see you guys on the next WOW session. You guys take care.